Today's lesson is 3.4, and we're going to be discussing slope-intercept form. Some of this will be a review from pre-algebra, but we're going to go into a little bit more detail. All right, if you recall, the slope-intercept form of an equation is y equals mx plus b, where you have the slope and the y-intercept. And that is where we get the name of slope-intercept form, because when you have the slope and you have the y-intercept, you could easily plug it into this equation. All right, before we begin some of the work, we're going to go over some of the vocab and just a refresher on how to set equations equal to y. So put it in that form of slope-intercept, okay? So the slope-intercept form y equals mx plus b, you want to isolate the y. So you're always going to solve for y. So we're going to take this equation, 2x plus 4y equals 12, and we're going to rearrange it into slope-intercept by isolating the y. Now, we've already done standard form of an equation, so this is in standard form right now. Some of you may say, well, I could easily find the x and y intercepts so that I could graph this. And yes, you can. But most of the time, you will be dealing with the slope-intercept form of an equation, and so we need to become familiar with that, especially when graphing. So we're going to take this equation, 2x plus 4y equals 12, and we are going to rearrange it. Now, in isolating y, we have to get rid of our 2x first, okay? So we're going to subtract 2x on both sides. And in the slope-intercept form of an equation, your slope term comes first before your constant term. So this is the correct way to write it. Now, some students stop here, but y is not isolated. It's not all by itself. It still has that 4 attached to it. So we have to get rid of that 4 by dividing every term in the equation by 4. And we end up with y equals negative 1/2 x. And yes, we do need to reduce these, plus 3. And so this is your equation in slope-intercept form. Okay, so just to practice. Now referring to slope when we're graphing is rise over run. So this is when we are graphing. Okay. Change in y over change in x is typically when we're dealing with a table. Okay. And then if we go down to the y-intercept, this is where the line crosses the y-axis. Okay. And the ordered pair is always written where x is 0 and then y is some number, because that number is where we will plot the intercept. So 0 and some number. Okay. Now, x in the equation up here and y represent an ordered pair where x is the x of the ordered pair and y is the y of the ordered pair. And a lot of times we need that to make sure that our equation is true. So what that means is if I were to plug a number into the y, the m, the x, and the b, when we solve the right side of the equation, it should equal the y, making that equation true. And we have done a little bit of that in past lessons. Okay, vertical lines are undefined lines or an undefined slope. And it goes through the x-axis, not the y. So for example, this one right here, move this up. This here is a vertical line, okay? The slope, we're going to write this right here, vertical line. Slope is undefined, okay? And when you graph something like this, you will have an equation x equals 3. And the reason that it is x equals 3 is because it is going to go through the x-axis, okay? And so what you do is whenever you see an equation like this, you're going to plot a point, you're going to plot 3 on the x, okay? You're going to draw your line through the x-axis at 3, not along the x-axis. A lot of students will try to draw it horizontally. But anytime you have something like x equals 3, it is going to be a vertical line with a slope that's undefined, okay? Now, horizontal lines have a 0 slope and they go through the y-axis. So down here, we have y equals 3, okay? Y equals 3, you are going to plot a point at 3 on the y-axis and draw a line through that 3. So creating a horizontal line. And the slope is 0 because it's not going up or down. There is no slope. It's just straight across, okay? So we're going to practice graphing equations like this in just a little bit. Okay, let's go to page 2. This is where we're going to start practicing. So on page 2, we're just identifying what is the slope and what is the y-intercept in the slope-intercept equation. So if I were to write the blank equation up here, y equals mx plus b, okay? The number where the x is the slope. The number where the b is your y-intercept, okay? All right, so in looking at this equation, 3 is where your slope is, 5 is the y-intercept, okay, or the b. So what is the slope? The slope is 3. What is the y-intercept? It's 5, and rewrite it as an ordered pair, 0, 5, just like that, okay? Okay. All right, so this one right here, 1/2 would be our slope. And then -7 is our y-intercept. So this is our slope, m. -7, always take the sign in front of it. This is our b or our y-intercept. And we would write this as 0, -7. Okay. All right. I want you to figure out the slope. And then I want you to think about what the y-intercept is. So our slope is always the coefficient in front of the x. So it's -2. Now our y-intercept is not seen, but that does not mean we don't have a y-intercept. Look at this. We could add a +0. That is our y-intercept. It's 0. That means that this equation is going to go through the ordered pair 0, 0 on a graph. We also call this a direct variation equation because those equations always go through 0. All right, go ahead and do this one on your own, and then when you're done, check your answer up on the screen. Oops. Forgot to write it as an ordered pair. And yes, sometimes you will see y-intercepts as fractions. And then when you graph them, you turn them into mixed numbers to help you graph them. And I think we'll practice that a little bit later. All right, this one's kind of different. I want you to, we're going to write the slope-intercept equation here. Remember, the slope is always the coefficient in front of the x. So do we have a slope here? No, we don't. So our slope is actually 0. But we do have a constant, and that would be our y-intercept, 0, 4. Also, if we refer to the front where we have an equation of y equals 3, here, remember a horizontal line, which is what y equals 3 is, has a slope of 0. So for example, if I were to create a graph for this, I'm going to plot a point at 0, I'm sorry, at 4 on the y-axis, right? And then I draw a line through that, a horizontal line through that, and there is no slope. Okay, so that's how you would correlate the two. Okay. All right, let's go down to these. Remember that the slope is represented by m in the equation, and the y-intercept is represented by b in the equation. Y equals mx plus b. All you're going to do is write an equation and substitute the slope where the m is and the y-intercept where the b is. So for example, this one would be y equals 3x plus 2. Okay. Number 7, here's our slope and here's our y-intercept. Go ahead and write that one out and then check your answer up here. And if you get the hang of this, I would recommend doing all of them and then fast forwarding to the answers and just checking to see if you're correct. Okay. On number 8, the slope is 0 and the y-intercept is 3. So if our slope is 0, we basically have y equals 0x plus 3. Well, we don't need this 0 right here. So we would just have y equals 3, which again is similar to what the graph on the front side where you would have a horizontal line with a slope of 0, which is what this is. All right, I want you to do 9 and 10 on your own. So I'm going to pause the video and, oops, I'm going to pause the video so that you can try these on your own. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and show you the answers. If you're not finished, pause the video. And here are the answers to 9 and 10. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and go to page 3. What we're doing on page 3 is we're rearranging the equations like we did on the front page. We're finding the y-intercept and the slope, and then we're going to graph them. Okay, so in order to turn this into slope-intercept, we need to get rid of that 4x first. Okay, and then we will rewrite our equation. 2y equals negative 4x plus 10. And we still need to isolate that y, so we're going to divide everything by 2. And we get y equals negative 2x plus 5. Okay. So we have our slope and we have our y-intercept. So remember, the way to write our y-intercept would be 0, 5. And then we would plot a point at 5 on the y-axis, so right here. Okay. Our slope here is negative 2. So from the point of our y-intercept, we graph our slope. We go up 2 and to the left 1, or we could go down 2 and to the right 1. Either way works. Okay. And then we could draw our line. Now, if you already understand this, I would like you to go ahead and do example 12 on your own. I will be doing it up here on the screen. So if you want to try it on your own, go ahead and pause the video. Okay. All right, so first step is we need to put this into slope-intercept form. So again, I'm going to subtract 5x on both sides and then rewrite my equation. Don't forget the negative in front of the y. Now our y is negative. That is just the same as having a negative 1 in front of it. So now I need to divide everything by a negative 1 because we can't have a negative y. Okay. And so my final slope-intercept equation is y equals 5x minus 10. Okay, so here is our slope, 5. And here is our y-intercept, negative 10. So 0, negative 10. So I'm going to plot a point at negative 10 on the y-axis all the way down here. And then I'm going to graph my slope of a positive 5. So it'll go up 5 over 1. Up 5 over 1. And remember, you really only need 2 points to graph a line. And then I will, using my ruler, that's important to keep a straight line, make it easy for me to grade your work. There is your your graph equation. Okay. All right, let's go to page 4. Halfway done. Okay, page 4 is more practice. So what I would like to do is I am going to do number 14 with you, and then I'm going to have you do 13, 15, and 16 on your own, okay? So number 14, the reason why I want to do this is because you're going to end up with a fraction as your y-intercept, and so I want to show you how to graph that, okay? So here we need to isolate y. So let's subtract 3x on both sides. By the end of this lesson, you should become a pro at isolating y. And we're going to subtract 5. And then we end up with y equals negative 3/5 x plus 7 over 5. So let's go ahead and write these. Our y-intercept is 0, 7 over 5. And our slope is negative 3/5. Okay. So the slope is easy. We just rise over run, right? But the y-intercept is 7/5. What I would suggest you doing is just using your calculator and taking 7 divided by 5, and you get 1.4. So I'm just going to write this below it. Now, when you write your ordered pair, I want it as a fraction. But in order to graph, you need to know what two numbers you have to plot the point between. I think of it as this. I'm going to plot a point on my y-intercept at 1 and a little bit. So I'm going to go up 1 and just a little bit more. It's going to be between 1 and 2 because 1.4 is in between 1 and 2. Okay? So I just graph at 1 and a little bit. Now, the challenging part is graphing your slope. So when you graph your slope, you have to go down 3 over 5 or up 3 over 5. We're going to start going down. When I go down, though, I have to go down into the middle of the next box. So I'm going from the middle of 2 and 1 to the middle of 1 and 0. And then the middle of 0 and negative 1. And then in the middle of negative 1 and 2. And so I have to go down 3, 1, 2, 3. Then I have to, in the middle of the box, go over 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so my point is going to be in the middle. It's going to be over 5 and then in the middle of negative 1 and negative 2. Okay. Now, if I go up, I do the same thing. I go up 1, 2, 3 in the middle of the box, and then I go over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'll be in the middle of the box. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit so you can see what I'm talking about. All right. And then I am going to graph my line. And it should represent a negative slope going in that direction. Okay. So that's how you graph with a y-intercept of a fraction. Okay, what I would like you to do now is just for more practice, if you need it, I want you to do examples 13, 15, and 16. I'm going to pause the video, and when I come back, I'm going to show you the answers to all of them. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video. Okay, so you should have worked on these. If you didn't, pause the video and you can continue working. And then when you're finished, you can check your answers. Okay, so here is the answer to number 13. Okay, so your equation should be 3/2 plus 3. So you should plot a point at, zoom in again, plot a point at 3 on the y-axis, and then you have a slope of 3/2. Okay. All right, number 15. You should have ended up with 2x plus 7, plotting a point at 7 on the y-axis, and then with a slope of a positive 2. And then number 16, y equals negative x plus 8. So plot a point at 8 on the y-axis with the slope of negative 1. Okay. All right, let's go to page 5. Page 5 is more practice. So by this point, you might be saying, okay, I get this. Oh, wait. Yeah, I'm on page 5. Sorry. Um, what I would like for you to do is I would like, so 17 is pretty much the same of what we've been doing. I'm going to have you do that one on your own. I want you to try 18 on your own because you're going to have a y-intercept that's a fraction. So I want you to try to see if you understand how to graph a fraction. All right. 19, I want you to do because this one also has a fraction and it might get a little bit confusing when you're working with fractions. And then I also want you to practice graphing this. So, what I would like for you to do is would like for you to try 17 and 18 on your own. And then when, but with that said, I am going to go ahead and work them out on the video just to give you, like, if you need extra help. So if you want to try them on your own, please pause the video and then fast forward to the answer. Here we go. 3y minus 6 equals 12x. Okay, so this is not in the right form. We have to isolate y. So this time we're going to get rid of the constant and move it to the other side. So we're going to add 6 to both sides. And we end up with 3y equals, I'm going to a little bit. 3y equals 12x plus 6. And then we divide everything by 3. And we get y equals 4x plus 2. Okay. So here is our y-intercept, 0, 2. And so I'm going to plot a point at 2 on the y-axis. And then our slope is 4. So I'm going to graph 4, rise 4, run 1 in the positive direction. Okay. And then I'm going to draw my line. If I'm going too fast, slow the video down or pause it as you go along. All right, let's look at 18. This is the one that's going to have a fraction. So let's isolate the negative 7y. We're going to subtract 4x on both sides. And then divide everything by a negative 7. And we end up with y equals 4/7 x minus 15 over 7. A lot of students get confused that why is this not a negative? It's not a negative because a negative divided by a negative gives you a positive. Okay. So our y-intercept is negative 15/7. Now, when I plot my y-intercept, remember, take your calculator and go ahead and divide negative 15 divided by 7, and you get negative 2.1 forever, right? So I'm just going to put negative 2.1, and this is going to be in between negative 2 and negative 3. Actually, I should have done that the other way around. Okay, let me change that. because they're negatives, the numbers look like they're going backwards, but they're not. Okay. So that means that I'm going to plot a point between -2 and -3 on my y-axis. So that would be right here. And then my slope is 4/7. Okay. So that means I'm going to rise 4, run 7. So remember, we're in the middle of the box. So as we go up, we're in the middle of -2 and -1. In the middle of -1 is 0, and you keep going over 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you go over 7, and you plot your point in between 1 and 2. I could also go down 4 and over 7 here. So let me zoom in to see how I did that halfway mark. Let me make that more clear. And that's how I did it. Okay, so in between -2 and -3. And then this point is in between -6 and -7 on 7. And in between 1 and 2 on that 7. All right, so now I'm going to draw my line. Okay. Let's move on to number 19. I'm doing 19 because we're going to have a fraction. And I'm going to show you how to clear it or remind you how to clear it. All right, so we're going to subtract 2x on both sides. And we end up with -1/3 y equals -2x plus 3. Now we can divide everything by a -1/3 if we wanted to, or which means that we'd be multiplying everything by a -3. So I want to get rid of this fraction. So I have to multiply by the reciprocal of 1/3, -1/3. Or I can just multiply everything by a -1/3, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to multiply this by a -3, and this is going to clear the fraction. So if you think about it over here, -3 over 1 times -1/3, okay? This becomes a negative or +3 because a negative times a negative is a +3 over 3, which is just 1. So we end up with just y right here, or a 1y, okay? If I multiply this by a -3, that means I have to multiply my -2 by a -3 and my 3 by a -3, okay? So I end up with y equals 6x minus 9. So my y-intercept is -9, and my slope is 6. So let's plot a point at -9 on the y-axis, and then graph our slope of 6, and draw our line. Okay, let's look at 20. Remember this one from the front? If I want to draw this line, let's go ahead and write y equals mx plus b. We do not have a slope. So it's y equals 0x plus and then our constant of 5. And we don't need this. So that's why we end up with 5. The way to graph this would to be to plot your y-intercept on the y-axis of 5. And then you just draw a line through the 5. Do not draw it along the y-axis, just through your 5, okay? Oops. And then your slope here is 0 because there is no slope, right? This is a 0 slope horizontal line. Okay, so that's how you graph that. If it were at x equals 5, I would have plotted a point at 5 on the x-axis and drawn a vertical line through it. Okay, let's go to the last page. On the last page, we are just finding equations from a graph. So what I want you to do, let's see, we're going to find our y-intercept. Our y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis, and it crosses at 4. So our y-intercept is 0, 4. And then our slope, we have to find another line that crosses an intersection of a box. So I'm going to go down this line and it crosses right here at 4, 1. And once I get that, I can find my slope. So I'm going to rise 3 and I'm going to run 4 in the negative direction. So we have a negative 3/4 as the slope. Okay, it doesn't matter where your negative goes, by the way. It could go with 3, with the 4, or right in the middle of your fraction bar. So now that we have our slope and our y-intercept, we can write our equation. Y equals negative 3/4 x plus 4. Okay. I'm going to do example 23 with you, and then I want you to do 24 and 22 and 24 on your own. So again, this crosses the y-axis at 4. So my slope is, my y-intercept is 4. And then I find where it crosses another intersection. It crosses here, it crosses here, it crosses here. I could use any 2 points to find my slope. So I'm going to use these 2 points. It doesn't matter. Your slope will always be the same. I'm going to rise 2 and run 1. So my slope is 2. And then I plug this into my equation and I get y equals 2x plus 4. Okay, I would like for you to do 22 and 24 on your own. I'm going to pause the video, and when I come back, I'll show you the answers. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and show you the answers to these two so you can check them. Here is example 22. Okay. And here is example 24. Okay. All right, that concludes lesson 3.4, slope intercept form.